In 1513, beneath controlled light somewhere within the Ottoman world, a sheet of parchment gathers coastlines. Hands position older charts near its edges. Ink follows the western coast of Africa, crosses islands in the Atlantic, and turns toward lands recently encountered by European sailors. The man assembling the map is Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral and cartographer. He has not personally sailed along every shore he draws. He does not need to. Around him lies information gathered by other people, navigators who crossed dangerous water, pilots who followed coasts, merchants who carried descriptions between ports, and mapmakers who copied knowledge from earlier documents. The sources do not agree perfectly. One coastline bends differently on one chart than on another. An island appears in two positions. Distances expand or contract depending on who measured them, how they were copied, and what kind of map first carried them. Piri Reis must choose. A line from one source joins a shape from another. Names move from older charts onto new parchment. Notes explain pieces of inherited knowledge. Then the surviving fragment ends. Part of the coastline is lost where the map has been damaged or cut away. Whatever continued beyond that edge has disappeared. The scene can be reconstructed only in broad outline, but the map preserves the essential act. Knowledge is being transferred. A voyage becomes a description. A description becomes a chart. A chart is copied, combined, and carried into another century. How can one map remember coastlines its creator never saw? Piri Reis indicated that he compiled his work from multiple earlier maps and geographical traditions. Some may have been recent. Others may already have passed through several hands. Many of the individual sources he described can no longer be identified, matched with surviving objects, or examined directly. Some may have disappeared. Others may survive only indirectly through geographical information copied onto later maps. Their knowledge remained available even when the immediate source did not. Centuries later, viewers would examine the strange southern coastline of the surviving fragment and claim it showed something impossible, Antarctica before the continent was officially known, perhaps even without its ice. That interpretation would turn the map into evidence of lost technology, forgotten global surveys, or a civilization erased before recorded history. But the map's most important secret is not a frozen southern continent. It is the invisible chain of sources behind the ink. How old was the information Piri Reis inherited? How many journeys had been compressed into one sheet? How many sailors, scribes, pilots, and mapmakers contributed lines without leaving their names? And how much of the mystery comes from judging an inherited compilation as though it were a modern satellite image? To understand that, the trail must move backward more than 2,000 years. The parchment disappears. Ink becomes clay. The Atlantic coastline becomes a circle pressed into a small Babylonian tablet. Across 5 remarkable maps, the world will take 5 different forms. It will become a disk surrounded by dangerous waters. A desert route marked by valuable stone. A web of numbers capable of rebuilding a vanished image. An empire stretched into a narrow road network. And finally, an Atlantic chart assembled from sources that can no longer be examined directly. Each appears to contain knowledge or geographical ambition unexpectedly sophisticated for its age. But perhaps the real mystery is not whether ancient people saw the earth as we see it. Perhaps it is whether we have misunderstood what their maps were created to preserve. Were these maps impossible for their time, or have we misunderstood what ancient maps were designed to do? The Babylonian tablet is small enough to hold in one hand. Its surface is crowded with cuneiform signs and a circular diagram pressed into clay. The object does not resemble the broad, detailed world maps familiar today. Yet within that small circle lies an entire ordered universe. The tablet is generally dated to the late Babylonian period, commonly around the 6th century BCE. It is known as the Babylonian Map of the World, or Imago Mundi. Babylon appears near the center. The Euphrates runs through the represented world. Assyria and other named regions appear around it. Cities, lands, and geographical features occupy a circular form surrounded by water. That encircling water is identified as the Bitter River. Beyond it, triangular shapes extend toward distant regions at the edge of the familiar world. If treated as a modern projection, the image seems strangely simple. A disk. A central city. A river. Water surrounding everything. But the tablet was not designed to reproduce the Earth with modern scale and precision. It organized geography together with political importance, cultural identity, inherited tradition, and cosmic order. Babylon's central position may express its importance within the mapmaker's world rather than a calculated claim that the city occupied the physical center of the planet. Real places and meaningful order exist on the same surface. The Euphrates is recognizable. Assyria and other regions are named. Yet the world also has a center, a boundary, and an uncertain outside. The triangular regions beyond the Bitter River deepen that uncertainty. Their descriptions are incomplete, and the tablet itself is damaged. They appear to represent remote places where inherited geography and cosmological imagination could meet. Some details may have grown from reports of distant lands. Others may have belonged to older traditions whose origins were already obscure. They are not proof of lost continents or confirmed global voyages. Their importance lies in the boundary they preserve. Where did geographical knowledge end and the imagined world begin? The answer may never have been perfectly clear. A real place described by travelers could enter scribal tradition and acquire meanings beyond its physical location. A remembered direction, distant mountain, or unfamiliar people might be preserved beside ideas about the structure of the world itself. The tablet gathered these forms of knowledge into one object. That is what makes it extraordinary. A piece of clay small enough to hold could contain a river, kingdoms, surrounding waters, distant regions, and the border between the familiar and the unknown. It was an ordered universe made portable. But centuries earlier, another mapmaker had faced a very different problem. There was no need to place the whole world on one surface. The task was to cross a desert and locate what the state desired. The second map survives not on clay, but on fragmented papyrus. Its lines pass through valleys and mountain forms. Colors distinguish parts of the land. Written notes identify routes and valuable materials. It is known as the Turin Goldmine Papyrus. Usually dated to around 1150 BCE, it is associated with ancient Egypt and the community of Deir el-Medina. Scholars commonly attribute it to the scribe Amunacht, though the surviving evidence does not make every detail of its authorship certain. The fragments represent part of Wadi Hammamat, a desert corridor connecting the Nile Valley with routes leading toward the Red Sea. This was a landscape of exposed rock, severe heat, difficult movement, and valuable resources. Egyptian expeditions entered the region seeking stone and gold. Reaching those materials required organized knowledge of routes, landmarks, terrain, water, and the formations in which useful resources could be found. The Turin Papyrus compressed that knowledge into a portable surface. Mountains and wadis appear across it. Colors distinguish different geological areas. Routes move through the landscape, while annotations connect visible features with stone, gold, and locations important to an expedition. This is why it is often described as one of the earliest surviving topographical and geological maps. It does not merely indicate where a destination lies. It records qualities of the land. The map turns terrain into practical memory. Consider an expedition moving through Wadi Hammamat. Heat rises from the valley floor. Mountain ridges of different colors stand against the bright sky. Workers, guides, and officials move through a landscape whose useful routes may be difficult for an outsider to recognize. The surviving papyrus need not have been carried on one specific journey for its information to reflect such expeditions. Its lines and notes preserve the knowledge required to match recorded features with real formations in the desert. A colored mountain mattered because someone could connect it to visible stone. A route mattered because it guided movement through difficult ground. An annotation mattered because people understood the material it identified. Behind the papyrus lies a chain of observations. Someone recognized a route. Someone identified a resource. Someone remembered a landmark. Someone organized that knowledge into marks another person could use. The visible map is the final surface of information gathered through movement and labor. The first two maps answered entirely different questions. Imago Mundi arranged an entire world as a political, geographical, and cosmic order. The Turin Papyrus recorded movement and resources within one specific landscape. One made the universe understandable. The other made a difficult route usable. Both reduced a larger body of knowledge into relationships that mattered to the people who created them. This is the first key to ancient maps. Their purpose was not always to reproduce physical shape as accurately as possible. A map could preserve importance, movement, materials, boundaries, instructions, memory. But a new problem appears when the ambition becomes far greater. Clay can preserve a circular world by reducing it to a powerful order. Papyrus can preserve a desert route by concentrating on one limited landscape. What happens when a geographer attempts to record thousands of places across Europe, Africa, and Asia? A single drawing is vulnerable. It can be damaged, lost, or altered through repeated copying. If the image disappears, its geography may disappear with it. In the 2nd century CE, in Alexandria, Claudius Ptolemy approached the problem differently. Names became coordinates. Latitude and longitude could position cities, rivers, islands, and coastlines within a structured system. Instructions could explain how a spherical world might be represented on a flat surface. The system was not perfectly accurate. It depended upon limited observations, inherited reports, uncertain distances, and assumptions that introduced distortion. But it transformed what a map could be. A coastline no longer had to survive only as ink. It could survive as structured information. A city might vanish from one damaged drawing yet remain recoverable if its position had been recorded numerically. The original visual map could disappear while coordinates and instructions continued through copied manuscripts. Later hands might draw the world again. Not perfectly. Not exactly as Ptolemy or an ancient mapmaker first imagined it. But closely enough for lost geography to return to the page. The next map would not survive in the usual way. Its ancient surface could vanish. Its first lines could be lost. But the world encoded inside it could be reconstructed. Can a map survive for centuries without the original map itself? In 2nd century Alexandria, the world arrives in fragments. Ships enter the harbor carrying merchants, sailors, officials, and reports from distant coastlines. Travelers describe roads measured in days. Astronomers watch the sky and compare the positions of stars. Earlier geographical writings preserve names inherited from expeditions whose witnesses are already gone. Somewhere within this city, Claudius Ptolemy works among pieces of knowledge gathered by many hands. A merchant may carry the remembered order of ports along a distant shore. A sailor may estimate how long one crossing took under favorable winds. A traveler may describe a city as lying several days beyond a river, while an astronomical observation places another location beneath a particular sky. Even the names can change while moving toward Alexandria. A place spoken in one language may be translated into another, then copied into Greek by someone who has never seen it. Sounds shift. Distances become uncertain. Descriptions lose the landmarks that once made them clear. Ptolemy is not looking down upon a complete world. He is assembling an ordered geographical system from incomplete human testimony. Some reports are precise. Others contradict one another. A city may lie farther east than one source claims and farther west than another. A coastline may be known only through a chain of ports. A river described by one traveler may be confused with another before its name reaches Alexandria. Ptolemy's task is not merely to draw. It is to organize uncertainty. A physical map remains fragile. Ink fades. Papyrus tears. Even careful copying may alter a coastline or move a place. But what if a map could survive without depending upon one drawing? What if the instructions needed to rebuild it endured? Ptolemy's Geographia attempted something remarkable. It gathered the names of thousands of places and assigned them positions through latitude and longitude. It described ways of arranging geographical information and offered instructions for projecting a spherical world onto a flat surface. The result was more than one map. It was a system for making maps. A city no longer existed only as a dot of ink. It could be represented by numbers. A coastline could be reconstructed from a sequence of recorded positions. The map could disappear while the method of rebuilding it remained. That possibility changes the meaning of survival. A drawing must be copied as a drawing, every curve depending upon the eye and hand of the copyist. But names and coordinates can travel as text. The image may vanish while its structure continues through words and numbers. Centuries later, someone who never saw the original surface can spread fresh parchment across a table and begin again. A point is placed. Then another. A coastline slowly returns. But Ptolemy's world was not magically accurate. Its system preserved mistakes as well as knowledge. Ancient measurements were uneven. Some places could be positioned through astronomical observation. Many others depended upon estimated journeys, inherited traditions, and information that had already passed through several people. Distances could stretch. Coastlines could bend. Assumptions about the size and extent of the known world introduced major distortions. One uncertain coordinate could move a city. A chain of errors could pull an entire region out of shape. Then the manuscripts themselves passed between generations. A copyist reproducing a column of coordinates might misread a symbol. A damaged number might be guessed. A mistaken latitude could shift a settlement north or south, while an altered longitude displaced it east or west. The change might appear tiny on the page. On a reconstructed map, it could transform the coast. Structured information can survive longer than an image. It can also give errors a long life. Yet the mistakes should not conceal the achievement. Ptolemy attempted to place a vast known world inside a repeatable framework without satellites, aerial photography, standardized global surveys, or instruments capable of measuring every longitude directly. He gathered scattered geography and made it speak one language. Numbers. The ambition itself is extraordinary. Then the centuries began to pass. Copies of the Geographia were transported, stored, damaged, translated, forgotten, studied, and copied again. Some disappeared. Others survived through circumstances no one could have planned. Imagine a manuscript resting in a quiet collection while the political world outside changes. Its pages hold columns of place names. Numbers stand beside cities that no longer answer to the same rulers. Roads have shifted. Ports have declined. Languages have changed. Still, the coordinates remain. A copyist bends over the text and reproduces them line by line. One uncertain mark must be interpreted. A faded numeral may be copied correctly, or not. The copyist may never have seen the sea whose coast is being preserved through those numbers. Yet each careful line carries the geographical system forward. No complete original world map personally drawn by Ptolemy is known to have survived from antiquity. The relationship between his text and any maps that may once have accompanied it remains uncertain. What endured was a geographical tradition. Names. Coordinates. Projection methods. Instructions capable of producing new images. Many surviving Ptolemaic maps were created centuries after Ptolemy lived. They are later constructions based upon information transmitted under his name, not untouched sheets recovered from his own table. That distinction makes them more mysterious, not less. A later mapmaker spreads fresh parchment across a table. Beside it lie columns of names and numbers copied from manuscripts whose own histories may already stretch back through centuries. At first, the surface is empty. Then measured points begin appearing across it. One marks a city. Another fixes the position of an island. Several points suggest the curve of a coast. A river is drawn between inland locations, while mountain ranges and regions fill the spaces around them. Slowly, the blank surface begins holding a world. But one coordinate is uncertain. The numeral may be damaged, or two manuscripts may disagree. The mapmaker must decide whether to trust one reading, follow another, or leave the location unresolved. A single choice changes what appears nearby. The world returns line by line, but never without interpretation. Whose world is being drawn? Ptolemy's? The world described by his unknown sources? Or a new world shaped by centuries of copying, correction, and error? The hand belongs to a later age. The information preserves ancient geography, yet every line depends upon judgment. Projection choices alter the final image. Blank spaces invite decisions. A damaged coordinate can redirect a coastline. The reconstructed map is both recovered and newly made. It is a conversation across time. Ancient observations reach later copyists. Copyists reach mapmakers. Mapmakers turn inherited numbers into visible coastlines. The original context is gone, but the system continues to generate images. A clay tablet survives because the object endures. A papyrus map survives because fragments escape destruction. Ptolemy's geography survives because its information can outlive any single image. But not every map needed to preserve the measured shape of the world. Some preserved movement instead. The next object appears almost impossible. It is extraordinarily long and narrow, assembled across joined sections of parchment that carry the eye through an elongated world. Following it is less like looking down upon continents than traveling sideways across a corridor of geography. Seas shrink into thin bands. North and south are compressed. Lands that should spread across broad spaces are crowded with settlements, stations, symbols, and roads. Europe stretches along the parchment. Italy lies within an extended strip. The Mediterranean becomes a narrow channel dividing compressed lands. Cities appear less like points within landscapes and more like stops along continuous lines. At first, the map seems badly distorted, as though someone knew the names of places but had lost the shape of the world around them. Then the roads begin to make sense. The strange proportions are not hiding the map's purpose. They are revealing it. This is the Tabula Peutingeriana. The surviving object is a medieval parchment copy, generally dated to around the end of the 12th or beginning of the 13th century. Its information derives from a much older late antique Roman map tradition. The parchment is medieval. The network inside it reaches back toward the Roman world. Across its joined sections, physical space has been compressed into a narrow visual passage. Roads cross the elongated lands. Settlements and staging points fill space that another map might devote to realistic coastlines and mountain systems. Its primary concern is connection. The question is not what the land would look like from above. The question is how one place leads to the next. Its logic resembles a modern transit diagram. A subway map may distort direction and distance while preserving the information a traveler needs most, which line connects with which station, and where a change must be made. The tabula performs a similar transformation on an imperial scale. Imagine following one road across the parchment. A traveler leaves a settlement before sunrise. The gate recedes behind them while the road takes shape in the first pale light. Milestones divide the route into known stages. By midday, the road approaches a river crossing where movement slows. Water, animals, goods, and people must pass through a point that may be easy in one season and difficult in another. Beyond the river lies a station. On the map, it may be only a name or symbol. On the journey, it matters because the traveler needs water, food, shelter, fresh animals, or reliable information about the road ahead. Another route may branch nearby. One path continues toward the next city. Another leads toward a settlement physically larger but less useful to the present journey. The smaller station becomes important because it makes movement possible. Farther on, roads meet again. A junction gathers travelers from different directions and turns separate journeys into one network. Weeks of difficult movement become a readable chain of names. The map does not remove mountains, weather, exhaustion, or delay from the real journey. It compresses them so connection can be seen. The empire becomes a sequence. Road to station. Station to junction. City to port. One region linked with another. The distortion reveals purpose, not ignorance. The mapmakers chose which information mattered. Coastlines could be compressed, but the order of destinations and the links between them had to remain legible. Space was reorganized around travel. By this point, the maps no longer seem like competing attempts to draw the same picture. Imago Mundi preserved political and cosmic order. The Turin Papyrus preserved terrain and resources. Ptolemy preserved coordinates and instructions for reconstruction. The Tabula preserved routes and connections. Each transformed geography because each needed geography to perform a different task. But the tabula carries another mystery. Its surviving parchment is medieval, while much of the network it records belongs to an older Roman tradition. Between those periods lies an invisible chain of lost versions. One copy may have preserved an ancient route exactly enough for later hands to recognize it. Another may have altered a place name by a single letter. A later copyist may have reproduced a symbol after the world that gave the symbol meaning had already begun to disappear. An ancient road is recorded. A later hand copies it. A name remains after the place itself has changed. Older information sits beside additions from another age. Eventually, the network reaches the surface that survives today. Copying rescued knowledge from disappearance. It also created opportunities for change. A distance could be misunderstood. A settlement omitted. A symbol reproduced after its original context had become uncertain. Some places may reflect different historical layers rather than one perfectly unified moment. At what point does a copied map become a new map? If an ancient transport network survives only through medieval parchment, which century does the object truly belong to? The physical material belongs to the Middle Ages. Much of its geographical logic belongs to the Roman imperial world and late antiquity. The chain between them belongs to every period in which the information was copied, altered, or protected. The object is one surface carrying many times. Ptolemy's world and the tabula survived in different ways. One could be reconstructed from coordinates and projection instructions, even when no complete original image endured. The other preserved an older road tradition because later hands copied it onto new parchment. Both outlived their earliest surfaces. Both reveal the fragility of transmission. Every surviving manuscript suggests versions that did not survive. Every reconstructed coastline contains choices made after the ancient geographer was gone. Every road on the tabula passed through the hands of copyists who may never have traveled it. Maps do not move through history unchanged. They pass from image to text. Text back into image. Ancient information onto later parchment. Observation into number. Number back into coastline. Something survives. Something shifts. Something is lost. And now the scene returns to 1513. A sheet of parchment lies beneath controlled light. Piri Reis draws the Atlantic world from inherited geographical sources. Coastlines meet where separate traditions overlap. Names gather beside islands. Notes acknowledge that the map did not emerge from one voyage or one pair of eyes. But unlike Ptolemy's coordinates, Many of the individual charts behind this new map cannot now be identified with certainty. Some may have disappeared. Others may survive only through the information Piri Reis transferred from them. The visible coastlines remain. The chain behind them is hidden. The question is no longer whether knowledge can survive after one original image disappears. It clearly can. The question is what happens when many lost or unidentifiable images are compressed into one surviving sheet. A map built from unnamed journeys. Copied shores. Conflicting measurements. Charts that can no longer speak for themselves. Not supernatural ghosts. Documentary ones. What happens when a mapmaker builds a new world from maps that no longer survive? The parchment remains beneath controlled light. It is 1513 again. Around Piri Reis lie charts shaped by different voyages, ports, languages, and geographical traditions. They do not agree. One places an island farther west. Another changes its shape. A coastline informed by Portuguese navigation follows one course, while an older source bends the same shore differently. Names shift between languages. Distances refuse to align. Piri Reis must decide what to preserve. His ink joins observations that began with other people. A line seen from one ship meets a coast copied from another chart. An island recorded by one navigator appears beside a name inherited through a separate tradition. The finished map looks like one object. But it is already many maps. Its surviving parchment is the visible layer of an archive that has mostly disappeared from view. The final combination can be examined. Most of the individual documents behind it cannot. Only part of Piri Reis's world map survives. The fragment shows the western coast of Africa, Atlantic islands, and sections of eastern South America. Ships move across the painted sea. Animals occupy parts of the land. Place names and written annotations gather beside coastlines. Across the lower portion, a strange southern coast curves away from the recognizable geography above it. Then the parchment ends. Modern viewers are not looking at the complete world Piri Reis drew. They are looking at one surviving section, separated from whatever once continued beyond its missing edges. A fragment invites reconstruction. But it also invites imagination. In 1929, during work among manuscripts and older materials at Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, the painted parchment came to modern attention. An early 16th century Atlantic world appeared among aging papers. The African coast was familiar. Parts of South America could be recognized. Ships, names, animals, and annotations belonged to an age being transformed by Atlantic exploration. But the southern line looked unfamiliar. The map was old, visually striking, and incomplete. That was enough for a larger mystery to begin. The southern coastline stretches away from South America and bends across the bottom of the fragment. Isolated from the historical setting of the map, it can appear to resemble another continent. Antarctica. Later writers claimed that Piri Reis had depicted Antarctica centuries before its recorded discovery. Some went further, arguing that the map showed the continent without its ice. Theories followed quickly. Perhaps the coastline came from extremely ancient surveys, or from a forgotten civilization whose geographical knowledge had survived through lost maps. The idea was powerful because several real mysteries seemed to support it. The map genuinely dates to 1513. Its southern feature is strange. Its larger context is missing. The complete chain of sources behind it cannot be reconstructed. Where evidence ends, imagination finds room. But resemblance is not identification. The Piri Reis map was compiled from charts created at different scales, through different measurements and cartographic traditions. When those sources were combined, coastlines could be stretched, compressed, rotated, or continued in ways that look unfamiliar on a modern map. Piri Reis also worked before the full outline of South America was securely known within the geographical traditions available to him. Early modern cartographers sometimes expected great southern lands without possessing accurate surveys of their coastlines. A strange line could therefore grow from uncertain reports, inherited conventions, and the difficulty of joining inconsistent sources on one surface. There is no reliable evidence that the map accurately depicts the coast beneath the Antarctic ice. There is no demonstrated chain connecting Piri Reis with a prehistoric survey of an ice-free Antarctica. The southern feature is generally understood as a distorted or continued representation connected with South America rather than an accurate map of Antarctica. Its exact formation may still be debated. Several sources or conventions could have contributed to its shape. But uncertainty about a distortion does not prove an impossible continent. Rejecting the Antarctica interpretation does not remove the genuine mystery. It reveals where that mystery actually lies. Not beneath Antarctic ice. Behind the parchment. Piri Reis included annotations explaining that he compiled geographical information from earlier maps and traditions. Some material reflected recent Portuguese exploration. Other information came through older geographical sources. In his own account, one source was associated with Christopher Columbus. Yet many of the individual documents he described cannot now be identified, matched with surviving charts, or examined directly. Some may have disappeared. Others may remain unidentified. Some information may survive indirectly in later maps after its immediate source was lost. The final combination remains visible. Its ingredients cannot all be separated. Consider how one coastline might reach Piri Reis. A sailor watches land from a moving ship. Headlands hide bays. Distance is estimated from offshore. Wind and current complicate direction. The observation becomes a description or a line on a working chart. That chart is copied and carried to another port. A name changes language. A scale shifts. A later mapmaker joins the coastline to information gathered elsewhere. One descendant of that line eventually reaches Piri Reis. The first observer's name disappears. The coastline remains. This is the true lost archive within the map. Not evidence of supernatural knowledge or a forgotten civilization surveying the planet from above. An archive of human journeys, observations, errors, corrections, and documents that no longer survive as separate objects. Sailors who never met contribute to the same sea. Portuguese navigators mapping recently encountered shores stand invisibly beside earlier cartographers preserving inherited traditions. Piri Reis gives their scattered information one surface. That surface outlives most of the chain that created it. And now the 5 maps begin to align, not in physical shape, but in purpose. The Babylonian map of the world preserved political and cosmic order. Babylon, the Euphrates, the Bitter River, and distant outer regions were arranged within one meaningful universe. The Turin Goldmine Papyrus preserved terrain, routes, geological differences, and resources within a difficult desert landscape. Ptolemy preserved structured location through names, coordinates, and instructions that allowed later mapmakers to create new geographical images. The Tabula Peutingeriana preserved movement and connection, stretching the world so roads, stations, distances, and settlements remained readable. The Piri Reis map preserved inherited geographical testimony by combining information from sources that can no longer all be reconstructed. Each map appears strange when judged as a failed modern atlas. Each becomes intelligent when understood through the kind of memory it was designed to preserve. Sometimes the distortion reveals the priority. These maps were not photographs attempting to capture the same visual world with different levels of success. They were instruments designed around different needs. Order. Resources. Location. Movement. Inheritance. Their makers chose what mattered and reshaped space around it. Yet every surviving map stands within a much larger absence. Working charts could wear out at sea. Papyrus might be damaged by moisture or repeated handling. Clay tablets could break, be discarded, or remain buried. Manuscripts vanished when no later copyist preserved them. Geographical observations entered newer works after the names of the original observers were forgotten. What remains is not a complete record of earlier geographical knowledge. It is an uneven selection shaped by material, copying, storage, accident, and rediscovery. History did not deliberately choose the most accurate, influential, or beautiful maps. Survival was uneven. A practical chart might disappear because sailors used it until the surface failed. A less accurate copy might endure because it was placed somewhere dry and left untouched. One map could preserve an error for centuries while a better version vanished without a trace. That does not mean every lost chart contained forbidden or advanced knowledge. The loss itself is remarkable enough. It reminds us that the surviving objects are not the entire archive. They are what escaped it. And a lost map does not always disappear completely. Its surface may vanish while a place name enters another document. A coastline moves onto a later chart. A route survives through copying. Coordinates allow a new image to be drawn centuries after an earlier one is gone. Knowledge can outlive the object that first carried it. This is why the Piri Reis fragment matters even without Antarctica. It shows how many human experiences can meet upon one sheet of parchment. A coast first seen from a ship. A name translated in a port. A scale adjusted by a copyist. A chart placed beside another chart in 1513. The final line does not belong to one person alone. It belongs to a chain. The map cannot restore every link in that chain. It cannot tell us which chart contributed each curve or how many times a particular name changed before reaching the page. But it preserves the outcome. Information gathered in different places and years remained useful long enough to enter a new world map. That is a form of survival. Not perfect survival. Not unchanged survival. But enough. The maps in this story endured through different kinds of memory. Clay held a universe in a circular diagram. Papyrus held a route through valuable terrain. Coordinates carried geography beyond a vanished image. Medieval parchment preserved an ancient network of roads. One Ottoman fragment gathered coastlines from an archive now partly invisible. None of these systems preserved everything. A map always selects. It enlarges one relationship and compresses another. It names some places while leaving others silent. It preserves what its maker, or the traditions behind its maker, considered important. That selection can look like error when the purpose is forgotten. Babylon near the center appears naive only if the viewer expects a neutral projection. The stretched Roman world appears incompetent only if the viewer ignores the roads. The southern coast of Piri Reis appears impossible only if the map is treated as a precise modern survey instead of a compilation assembled from unequal sources. Understanding the map begins with asking what kind of memory it was built to carry. Night settles around the surviving fragment. The ships painted upon it no longer move. The animals remain fixed within their lands. Names stand beside coastlines whose sources cannot answer modern questions. The strange southern line remains. So does the missing edge. But the map does not require an impossible continent to remain mysterious. Its real mystery is human. It is the ability to gather scattered experience and turn it into a surface another person can read. To preserve a journey after the traveler is gone. To carry part of a coastline through languages, copies, and centuries. To lose the original chart while keeping enough of its knowledge to draw again. A map cannot remember everything. But it can preserve relationships that once mattered. A river beside a city. A route through a desert. A number beside a place name. A road connecting distant settlements. A coastline copied from an earlier chart. Each mark is a decision about what deserves to survive. Ancient maps were never photographs of the earth. They were systems of memory. And sometimes, one surviving map is all that remains of a world of knowledge that disappeared around it.